The Slav is one of black's most tried and tested defences to the queen's pawn for almost a century now. Strong players of the black pieces have been shown the validity of a whole variety of setups after the characteristic Slav moves 1 d4, d5, c4 and c6, the essence of the Slav. Sometimes we've seen black taking on c4 at a later date, developing his bishop to f5 or even to g4. Other times we've seen the knight come out to a6, a rather more exotic idea associated with Vasily Smyslov, the ex-world champion. And there are a whole variety of other methods of playing it, involving the not so swift capture, or indeed sometimes not capturing at all, on c4, sometimes following it with e6, the knight out to f6, the most normal developing square, and the bishop coming to d6, or even sometimes all the way out to b4 to pin a white knight at c3, like in the Nimzo Indian defence. And there's also a way of playing it where the bishop goes on the other diagonal to g6 into fianchetto, and this is called the Schlechter Slav, after the Edwardian player Karl Schlechter, who's actually very strong, and it can be argued became world champion by a somewhat disputed match with Lasker. That's going by the by. I mentioned that just to show you how reputable an opening it is. However, it's only about 1990 that we see the variation after d4, d5, c4, c6, knight f3, knight f6, knight c3, a6 coming into prominence, and this is the subject of our video. The a6 Slav, still very much a newcomer on the scene, but it's been deployed by the world's very strongest grandmasters. For example, World Championship match qualifiers Shirov and Anand have notched up some of the world's best players themselves by playing black. So its pedigree is becoming established. A lot of interesting players are using it in their repertoire, and we'll see some pretty interesting games in the course of this video. Our survey begins with 5e3, after which we should be seeing games with the thematic move b7, b5, the advance which black's fourth move prepared. The theory here looks very satisfactory from black's point of view. The attempt to get something like a Catalan opening for white with 5g3 is next on the agenda. It may well be playable for black to play either b7 to b5, as in many games, or put the bishop outside the pawn chain with bishop to f5 here. However, my recommended treatment is that favoured by the Bosnian Grandmaster Anand and Sokolov of the immediate capture on c4. We'll be seeing him put this to good use. a6 has created a hole in the black queen side, it could be argued, and many players have tried to immediately clamp it with 5c5. Looks a bit strange, a bit primitive perhaps. One of the ideas is after bishop f5, where the bishop wants to go, to play queen b3. Here I'll be introducing you to one totally radical strategical concept of putting the black rook on a7, where it turns out to be very happily placed, as you'll see. The sharpest lines of all in this system arise after bishop g5. This is because it isn't really possible for black to play the move e7 to e6 now with a straight face, because he's transposing into lines of the known Meran with the cryptic move a7, a6 thrown in. It may well be possible for him to take on c4. There have only been a couple of master games I know of from there, but after a4, quite possibly white has the advantage. Therefore, the recommended sequence we're going to look at, leading to great complexity, is 5 knight to e4. Still, the objective assessment of what happens then is by no means unfavourable for the second player. In 1987 I was spectating on a game between Lubojevic and Kasparov, where Lubo was black at a tournament in Brussels, and he played something like the Schlechter Slav with g6. He drew the game very comfortably as black in about 18 moves. In the post-mortem I was extremely impressed. He showed 4 or 5 different ways, I'm not exaggerating, totally different treatments of the middle game, was equalising against arguably the greatest player ever in each instance. Kasparov chose to respond to this Schlechter Slav with the move queen b3 very early on, which will form the basis of the next analysis. And I said to him afterwards, it looked a little bit strange to me. He said, no, it's a normal move in the Slav, what do you mean? Normal enough it may be here too, but we'll find out that by replying with just e6, black steers the game towards a comfortable equality. If white's reply to a6 is 5a4, then we have a normal Slav with two crypt